what we're covering today is our most common annual reporting. Um, Around this time, we have a lot of requests for what we completed and what we completed based upon the occupancies list for the last year. Um, every place has different requirements. California has the Senate bill, I think it was 1205 that passed a couple years ago. And so I'm going to go over kind of three different approaches to satisfying those requirements. Um, so if we go forward here, the first item here is that almost all inspection reports are based off of what you've done within a period of time. So for example, what you managed to complete last year. So the first option and approach to that data is simply going to the inspections and completed tab. That will give us a list of uh, inspections that were completed, in this case, for a fiscal year. And we can filter those down here for additional items. So if I hop into here and I run this for fiscal year 22, which would be last year, and this is our test system, so we have lots of different data sets in here. We can see that's 124 items. We can see that this does include items that were completed in calendar year 2023. These would be most likely re-inspections, couple initials here. So the first item that most people need is some departments want to see everything that you've done in the year, and some only want to see those initial inspections. So you can absolutely filter by the initials. We can click on the visit type and select initial. If you're using one of the reports up here in the reporting tab, the other option that you do have is you can use the re-inspection number column, as that is pretty well everywhere. And you would pull that in and set it to 0. 0 is the initial inspection in a series, and that's another way to grab that data. So here we can see that I have 105 items here. And at this point, I could export this to Excel. And if this satisfies the requirements that I've been given, then we're good to go. We don't have to do anything more here. If you guys are using Streamline for multiple programs, Brush and other items, you may need to then filter either by the template used in the inspection or by the type of inspection. You can also filter based upon property information. So we have like the zone station is already here, and a couple of other items here. So if I pull type, where's my type code? Here we go. We can see here that I also have type listed out here. And of course, building class. So if I wanted educational, right, I could filter on the description. I can also filter on the class code here. If I just add this over here. And again, our data doesn't always have complete items here, but we can see here that we do have a building class or two that are loaded here. And again, we could set that to be whatever we need it to be. Right, and so we can come in here and set it to either class code to be starts with E for your educationals if you want all of them, or you can filter just for your specific one or two. And so in that way, we can satisfy the requirement with just the list of what we did in the year. The second portion of this is satisfying the requirement when they want to know essentially based on property information. And so there's two ways to kind of go about that. The first way here is built into the properties tab. So we can click on properties. I've reset this back to the default, so this may or may not look like you would normally have it here. But what we would do then here is we would pull in the last inspected field. Now this field has underwent some changes in the past 6 months. This field is now the last time somebody stepped across the threshold and tapped complete. Um, and so this is accurate to that. Moving forward here, we can see that there is a lot of information here that is possibly older. And so this allows you to export your direct list, your properties list, 1,160 items in this particular test department's case. I could export this to Excel, and if that is what they were looking for, then I can go ahead and I can say, okay, I've satisfied that requirement. Now, being that we're a few months into the year, this may not satisfy the requirement at this time because, of course, it is the last time somebody stepped across the threshold. So it counts re-inspections, it counts everything. And so we can see here that we have some fairly recent inspections that were uh, marked complete here, and these may not be the initials. And so that kind of rolls into our third option here. But again, based upon what you need to see, we would pull in the additional fields. So if I pull in building class, for example, we'll just drop that there here. I do have a few building classes that are logged in here. You see I have an E1. And so I could definitely filter this list down either by building class or by property use code. And then once I've got this list kind of the way that I want it, again, you're just going to pull that down into Excel. I'm going to pull this down here because I'm going to show you the third way, which is the way that I have previously done these in the past. However, this way does require that you use an advanced function in Excel to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that here. I'm going to hop over to inspections, and I'm going to grab the information that I need. So I'm going to go back to 22. I'm going to make sure that both of my grids have the property ID attached to it. And then here, I'm going to go over here and filter this down for just the initial inspections. This is going to ideally limit me to not getting a bunch of duplicates. Again, if you're utilizing Streamline for multiple different programs, you may need to then filter it further by the type description and other items. Actually, I just realized here, and this is a big one, we all are in the same boat. This is scheduled inspections. So this is what I didn't complete from last year. I actually want to click on completed up here at the top. And here's my completed inspections. And again, I'm going to do that same thing. We're going to flip the fiscal year back over to 22. I already have my initial applied here. So there's 105 items. I'm going to go ahead and pull this down into Excel. And then, so what I did was I went up here to my extensions. I selected this extension, which is called Power Tools. And then I said, I'm going to merge a couple of sheets here, which is the same basic functionality as VLOOKUP. It's a little more powerful. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, this is my main sheet. I'm going to add an additional file here. This is here it is. I'm going to select these both, and then this is the part that's the best. So you can see here that it basically it finds the matches for you. In case I'm going to tell it to use property ID in both sheets, and then I'm going to go ahead and have it not update the values, but I am going to go ahead and have it put template type and completed date at the end. And we'll let this merge. It should take just a couple of seconds here. Perfect. It tells me the statistics on what it did. And then all the way over here at the end, you can see those 3 columns I inserted. And so what it did was it found every property ID that is in here. And this is an important note. You do want to have unique property IDs when you do this. Most of you are going to. There are a few departments that have specifically decided not to use unique property IDs. And so this would not be a functionality that you would be able to do. You would have to call me and I could generate this report from back-end information. However, moving forward here, we can see that we have everything that matched for the year. And so I can now filter these and I can specifically go to, for example, this row here. If I go to row 4, I can see that the last time it was inspected was 3/23. And so it's actually newer than that. So having that last inspected can be quite useful, even when you're running for older information, because it does then show that, well, hey, we are visiting, just not in that particular measurement period. And again, you can see that, of course, we have quite a few that aren't going to be. We have 4,000 and only 120 some odd. So you're going to see quite a few here that don't have a completed. And so at that point, I could start filtering these down and showing just the ones that we completed, just the ones that we didn't. I could pivot this data out and show as a percentage what was completed and what was not completed. And then the reason I include type code and template here is because oftentimes if you have multiple programs running within Streamline concurrently, you may have to divvy this data up even further for, okay, well, here's the brush inspections, here's the fire life safety inspections, here's my annuals, here's my state mandated, all of those items. Or, hey, I need to exclude my permit inspections from this because they're not part of the required data that either the state or the municipality is requiring. And so that is how to generate that same type of report 3 different ways, showing 3 different kind of levels of data. Any questions so far? And again, if you do, please pop them in the chat.
I have not seen anything yet, Josh.
Okay, absolutely.
Josh, if you can cover one of the common things that I see is people are running queries in Streamline and then they're unable to either get back or they create a query. Can you show how to clear those queries in there and how to tell, like on the bottom left-hand corner, that you have a query created?
Yeah, absolutely. This actually happens to me quite a bit, and so I've kind of made this almost muscle memory. What Justin's talking about here is if I go away from this page, I go back to properties, and I look something else up, and then I come back to inspections and completed because I have something else that I'm trying to generate, or maybe it's the next month. Notice that it retained my, let me clear these downloads. It retains my filter down here at the bottom left. And any filter that you have will appear here. And so when I hop into a grid, the first thing I do is pop down to the bottom right. And if the clear button is there, I hit clear. And that way I'm ensured that the data that I'm looking at does not have a current filter applied to it. Again, if you were previously looking up information, that would be one of the big ones there. Also, once you've got your filter applied, you can hop over here and click either create filter or the filter itself, and it will present you with the filter builder, which contains a lot more options for down here for equals. Right, so we have not only contains, but we also have different items. And this list actually tailors itself to the field type that you're looking at. So if I hop over here and I go to completed, and I go over here, you'll notice that I get all the date and time operators, right? So this is useful if you're saving a template and you want to say, hey, I'm always going to run this for a month behind. So if I say, okay, get me all the information for last month, I can go is last, where is it? Is this month, last week, next month, last month. Here we go. I can say is last month, and it will only pull the information from last month. When I then save this, so if I hit OK here, when I save this as a template, because there's no hard-coded date, I can say just last month and add it. Now, whenever I come back to this, I don't have to change my dates. If I come to this next month, it's going to show me the information from this month and so on and so forth. So if you've got a couple like that, that's a useful item. But when you come back to this screen, always make sure you're checking at the bottom here, because if you have a filter applied, it may not be one that's useful to you in the moment right now. And again, you just hit clear at the bottom on the right. It'll take the filter off, and then you can move forward with that here.
Josh, the other thing that I see often is that making sure that when you're running queries over multiple time frames, up in the upper right hand corner, to go ahead and select those other years as well. So make sure that you select 2021 and 22 if you want to run queries over multiple years. And we call it fiscal year in our system, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's fiscal year. You could run that on a calendar year too. You could select those other dates, and then under your completed, so Josh, if you want to select 21 and 22, and then you can select a date range under your completed area as well. So you just make sure that the data is looking at all of those other years, but then you have the ability to filter it here as well using your from and to dates.
Yep. And so, if we wanted to pull this for just 22, or if you were asked to provide information on a range that's not built into Streamline, like July 1 through June 30th of the next year, a traditional fiscal year, you would be able to do that here. 22 through 6/30/23. Now we haven't hit 6/30/23, but it will give us everything that's been completed so far. And so we can see here that's 106 items. And so the other item here is that if you're running this for a lot of dates, like I know that this department has 4 years in it, but many departments have 6 or more years. You can also unselect the years, and then it gives you everything. Now, the big deal there is it gives you everything. So it's not just information from that particular fiscal year. It's everything. If you're running this wide open, it may sit and spin for a few moments while it pulls all that data. And so that's a big item. The other item is, of course, you can export from almost any screen within Streamline here to any of the formats, Excel, something that will open in Word or Docs, so rich text format, DocX, and then of course PDF will export as a PDF-based report so that it will look the same no matter what computer you're viewing it on. Any questions about reporting so far or anything that we've covered here? All right, I think we're pretty good as far as that is concerned. And again, you can use these grids to save templates. So if you do have quite a few reports you're generating on a consistent basis, you can save them as templates, then come back in and just open the template. And again, if you've saved that in a manner where it makes sense, it will always do what you want it to do when you want it to do. So you can do this on a quarterly basis, for example, using these advanced date time operators. And that way, if you run a report every quarter, you can hop in here and just run it. The big thing here is, of course, if you are running this for a previous year, as Justin said, make sure that you're coming over here and either selecting the appropriate fiscal year or unselecting it. Either one of those technically works. My bias is to unselect because then it gives me the most possible data. But again, either is technically a correct way to run this.